Nothing will kill boxing, and nothing can save it. This quote is one of boxing's most fundamental truths. And if the boxing community could embrace this simple truth, you will not get too high, you will not get too low, and you will not over romanticize any sort of promotional company. You understand? And this quote was stated many years ago, many moons ago, by the incomparable Larry Merchant. Amazing commentator, amazing contributions have been given to this fight game over the years, over the decades by Larry Merchant. Long live HBO Boxing. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because, and why this quote is going to be the main idea, the fundamental truth of this video, is because this is my reaction to Zuffa Boxing cutting Alexander Gvozdyk. Alexander Gvozdyk back earlier in the year, in the early days of Zuffa Boxing, he had a really fun fight with Hot Rod Kalazic where he was winning, and it looked like he was on his way to stopping Hot Rod. And Hot Rod, from the depths of hell, wound up knocking him out in the latter stages of the fight. And it was a great fight. I think it was one of the first real great fights in the history of Zuffa Boxing, and I really enjoyed it. And I enjoyed, and I've always enjoyed. Let me make it clear: I've always enjoyed Alexander Gvozdyk's fights. I'm a big fan of the nail, right? And this fight was no different. And Hot Rod's always been in great fights too. So overall, I was satisfied with the product that night. And I didn't think that the fight was necessarily befitting of either guy getting cut. If anything, I would have loved to have seen him run it back or be involved in some other fights, to keep their careers going. Because right, isn't that what Zuffa Boxing's about? Isn't Zuffa Boxing supposed to be the antonym to all the promoters in boxing today? Isn't Zuffa Boxing supposed to be different than the top ranks and the PBCs and the Matchrooms and the Golden Boys, right? Aren't they supposed to treat fighters better when they give you exciting fights and exciting performances than other promoters do? Isn't that what their whole, just you could say foundation is built upon, right? Well, wrong. Because it was reported, and he spoke about it a lot. It has been reported that Zuffa Boxing has cut Alexander Gvozdyk, and they have went ahead and invoked a lose and we can fire you clause to terminate the contract of the former WBC light heavyweight champion of the world. So Zuffa Boxing, let it not be lost to anybody out there. I don't care what side of the fence you're on. If you're pro Zuffa, if you're anti Zuffa, if you're just stoic about it, kind of like I am at this point. No matter what side of the fence you're on, understand that Zuffa Boxing is a regular promoter like everybody else. They cut fighters. Alexander Gvozdyk isn't the first fighter they've cut. They cut Erdeson Garcia earlier in the year because he had a boring fight with Andres Cortez. That one was a bit more justified. This one to me is unfair and it's wrong because Alexander Gvozdyk had an entertaining fight, a fun fight, one of the best fights in the history of this very young company. So let's read some of the quotes from the nail himself because Alexander Gvozdyk stated the following, and I quote: "They terminated the contract in February after a loss. That is, they have the option that if a boxer loses, they have the right to terminate the contract, and that's exactly what they went ahead and did." After the fight, everyone was saying how great it was and everything was great. He then went on by saying, kind of recapping the fight, that he could see that in Hot Rod's eyes that he was he was going to knock him out. And he did admit that he got careless with his defense, but and that's when a fighter's hurt. That's when they're the most dangerous because especially at light heavyweight where these guys punch really hard. And he admits that he made a mistake, but nonetheless, the greater point I'm making here is that it was an exciting fight, and both guys deserve to continue to go on to do bigger and better things within the Zuffa Boxing umbrella. And one guy gets to move on, and one guy gets unfairly cut, which brings me back to my point, which is we shouldn't be over-romanticizing Zuffa Boxing. I'm seeing too many people on Twitter and in the boxing community and just overall in the world romanticizing Zuffa Boxing when in all actuality, we don't know what the hell Zuffa Boxing is. But we're starting to see that they are just as harsh as any other promotional company out there in the world. You understand? They will cut you on the drop of a dime for no other reason that they can. Because if you look at the first two guys that they've cut in their history, Erdeson Garcia, Alexander Gvozdyk. They had two completely different performances. Erdeson Garcia didn't even really try to win and put his hands in his pocket and put up a boring fight against Andres Cortez. Alexander Gvozdyk delivered a fun, exciting fight where he brought the action all night to Hot Rod and was on the verge of stopping him. He got careless, he got knocked out. But either way, people were excited, people were entertained, and people were happy about the fight. So why is he getting mistreated? Why is he getting cut? You know, these are the kind of questions that you got to ask about Zuffa Boxing. And these are the reasons why I tell certain people, you know, a lot of fighters I talk to at all levels, from the contender level to the prospect level to the championship level, you know, they come and they ask me, they say, BT, what do you think about Zuffa Boxing? And my answer to them is that I think it really depends on where you're at in your career, and I think that you know, they're just like any other promotional company, and you know, let's be honest here, they are not being structured as a regular promotional company. They are a conglomerate, the likes of which the boxing world has never seen, because they got, you know, and they got Endeavor, they got WWE, they got UFC, they got billions upon billions upon billions bankroll behind them through TKO, the Saudi government. Now they got down Paramount Plus. They are, and I would say, just being objective here, they are the best structured to have you could say, a takeover of the sport of boxing in the history of the sport. Nobody has ever been better positioned to take over the sport of boxing, in my humble opinion, than they are. You know, you could probably say Don King in the 80s, because Don King had so much pull with the sanctioning bodies, and boxing was less regulated back then. And, you know, he had a lot of the big connections at the networks like, you know, ABC and NBC and these kind of things. But I'll probably say since the golden years of Don King in the 80s and the 90s, nobody's been better positioned to have this much control of the sport of boxing than Zuffa Boxing since those years. You understand? I think in some cases, maybe even more than Don King, because, you know, as great as Don King was, he didn't have the WWE behind him. He didn't have UFC behind him. He didn't have all these political things behind him, right? Now with Zuffa Boxing, it's like, you know, we talk about Nick Khan, we talk about Dana White, we talk about all these powerful executives. We talk about Ari Emanuel. Ari Emanuel, by the way, for those of you who don't even know this, Ari Emanuel was just on a tour, like a satellite tour, probably about, I would say, 3 weeks ago. He was on tour and doing a bunch of interviews, and he was complaining about how it's actually TKO and Zuffa Boxing that's being mistreated by them not speeding up the Muhammad Ali Revival Act. They are trying to speed this bill through Congress so that they can have the control they really, really want. Now, look, you guys are getting a preview. You guys can choose to say I'm hating or being bitter. I don't really care. I'm so detached from from almost everything going on in boxing. I've been through a lot of shit in boxing this year behind the scenes that you guys don't know about. Okay, so I'm detached from everything. I'm not attached to like this stuff like I used to be. I enjoy the job. I enjoy covering boxing for you guys. But I tell you the truth, and I'm content to tell the truth. You guys are getting a preview right here with Alexander Gvozdyk of what's going to happen to these fighters if this bill goes through Congress, okay? And they have full control to do what they really want to do. Ari Emanuel was pretty much saying that, there's no basis for antitrust and they're being unfair to TKO by not speeding up the passing of the bill and these kind of things. And that news kind of just flew under the radar. And I went through and I read it real carefully. So I mean, these are all things that are really going on right before our eyes. And of course, the big mainstream media outlets like Ring Magazine, they're not going to tell you guys these things. ESPN, for the most part, they're not going to tell you guys these things right away, at least. I'm just telling y'all what it is, okay? They cut Alexander Gvozdyk, a guy who was a legitimate champion, true Ukrainian warrior. He flew the flag for Ukrainian boxing really high with pride, dignity, and honor in the fight with Hot Rod. Hot Rod did the same on his end. It was a great fight. And one guy was unjustly cut by a company that promised that they would not resemble or look anything like the current Big Four in American boxing that has, in many respects, failed the sport of boxing throughout all these years. So that being said, you can't say that this doesn't resemble that. If anything, you could probably say it might even be a little worse, because Zufa's been pulling the trigger with them cutting fighters. People can say what they want about Top Rank. I've seen Top Rank like with a guy like Alan Garcia, who I don't really think is this otherworldly talent. But Alan Garcia got knocked out by a guy with like one knockout in 20-something fights, some Spaniard that we never heard of, and they still brought Alan Garcia back. You know, I've seen Brian Pillman Jr. have dog shit performances before he became world champion. They still brought him back, you know. There's, believe it or not, like Top Rank has shown, even in recent years, more grace to fighters in terrible performances than a guy like Alexander Gvozdyk, who actually had a good performance. He just had a lapse, and it cost him. So that's just some food for thought. I'm not going to give Zuffa Boxing I have my opinions about certain things. I think there's some things Zuffa's doing great. Like I do like the stories like Tony Hirsch and what was the guy's name? Dimjekov, the light heavyweight. He's a beast. Like there's fighters that have really benefited from Zuffa Boxing. So I'm not saying it's all bad. They're doing some good things. You know, Ryan Scally, the matchmaker. I've been knowing Ryan Scally, the matchmaker, before he was even matchmaking, going back to 2016, and he's doing a great job with these shows. But at Berlanga versus Butler was an enjoyable show. You know, I'm not gonna sit here and act like they don't have a product on some nights, but there are things that make me wag my finger. So like I told you guys, when they complete their 15 show, right now they just completed Zuffa Boxing 10. When they complete Zuffa Boxing 15, you guys will get the full True School Sports report card. I've decided to give them a 15-show grace period because I feel like by then, you know, things in Congress will have happened. We'll have seen enough shows. There will have been enough developments. Well, there will have been enough trial and error and things going on with the sanctioning bodies to where I can finally say these are my crystal clear thoughts on Zuffa Boxing. But right now, I'm waiting and seeing, and I'm just talking about it as everything unfolds in real time. But yeah, wagging my finger to Zuffa for cutting a true warrior like Alexander Gvozdyk. He did deserve that.